They do not take money with them. They do not take fame. They only take what they have sown. Tonight's story is about a man who realized that truth just before closing his eyes forever. Listen slowly, listen all the way through, because perhaps you may be able to let go of one resentment of your own. That night on St. Helena, the wind rose as if someone were standing outside the window, exhaling a long, cold breath. The sea was black, waves crashing against the cliffs like the sound of teeth grinding. A light rain fell, each drop striking the glass with a soft tap, tap, steady and patient, like time knocking on the head of a man who once believed himself immortal. In the low stone room, the oil lamp flickered. The shadow on the wall stretched and shrank, twisted like a soul pulled taut between life and death. On the narrow bed, Napoleon Bonaparte lay on his side. His shoulders had grown thin, his back bent. Fingers that once signed orders of conquest now trembled lightly like dry branches. His eyes were still sharp, but sharp like a dull knife. Wherever they looked, they saw the cuts of the past. Outside, there was no longer martial music, no hooves of horses, no cries of "Vive l'Empereur" shaking the square. There was only the wind and an old man, listening to his own breathing. If someone were to ask, a man who once held Europe in his hands, what does he still hold now? The answer might make one shudder. He still holds resentment. Napoleon was not born into luxury. He was born in Corsica, a place the French looked at with half an eye. His accented speech, his strange-sounding name, his out-of-place homeland pushed him into a corner that needed no label, only a look of contempt. At military school, the sons of nobles called him the peasant. They hid his books. They smeared ink on his clothes. They laughed at his small frame whenever he walked by. Napoleon did not fight like a child. He did not rush in and grab hair. He simply stood still and looked closely, looked long, looked until the other felt a chill down his spine. People say that once, a powerful boy shoved him, spilling ink all over his notebook. The whole class roared with laughter. Napoleon stood up, wiped the ink from his lips, and said very softly, "Laugh, laugh your fill. I will remember." That phrase, "I will remember," had no volume, but it had weight. Some people remember in order to forgive. Some remember in order to learn. Napoleon remembered in order to repay. From that day on, deep inside him was a vow no one could hear. One day, all will kneel. And you know, some vows when spoken are not sent to heaven. They are sent to oneself. They turn a person into a machine. They burn away softness. They nourish the ego. And they quietly sow karma. Napoleon grew like a fire. He studied tactics the way others breathe. He memorized every map, every river, every hill. He looked at the battlefield like a chessboard. Others saw blood. He saw lines of movement. He won battle after battle. His name was shouted in the streets. Medals glittered on his chest. Soldiers looked at him as if he were destiny itself. But the more he won, the lonelier he became. Because victory does not only make people lift their heads high, it also makes them wonder, who is sincere, who is false, who stands beside me for me, and who for power. Napoleon trusted no one completely. And when a man trusts no one, he begins to create enemies in the shadows. He kept lists of opponents. He remembered the names of those who mocked him. He remembered even the glances that once avoided him. He remembered and remembered as if nailing them down. If life has an invisible bag carried on one's back, then Napoleon's bag from that moment on began to grow heavy. Not heavy with gold, but heavy with invisible things: suspicion, hatred, gloating, and the pleasure of revenge. In Napoleon's court, there was an old friend, a trusted general named Armand. They had starved together, slept under the rain together, split a dry loaf of bread until their teeth ached. Armand was gentle but straightforward. He was not skilled at flattery, not good at maneuvering, but he was loyal. Napoleon trusted Armand until Napoleon began to believe that no one was absolutely trustworthy. One cold evening, someone handed Napoleon a letter. It was unsigned. The handwriting trembled as if the writer feared death. It read, "Armand is in contact with the opposition. They promise to spare his life if he sells the plans." Napoleon read it. His face did not change, but those close to him knew. When Napoleon fell silent, cannons were firing in his head. He did not question Armand. He did not give Armand a chance. He simply summoned a guard and said one short sentence: "Take him away." Armand was arrested at midnight. His door was kicked open. He had no time to put on his shoes. He only managed to look at Napoleon once, a look of shock, pain, and confusion. "Your Majesty," Napoleon turned away. Armand was dragged off like a sack. 3 days later, the court announced that Armand had died due to an accident in prison. No one was allowed to ask. His family was stripped of rank and exiled. Those who once drank with him pretended the next day not to know his name. People thought Napoleon would sleep well after eliminating a traitor. But that night, Napoleon did not sleep. He lay there, listening to the ticking clock hammering into his skull. With every tick, he saw Armand's eyes that did not curse, did not hate. They asked only one silent question: why? Napoleon jumped up and paced. He told himself, "I had to do it. I am emperor. I cannot be soft." But the more he spoke, the more his voice sounded hollow. Some deaths do not frighten people. They weigh them down, like carrying another stone in that invisible bag. If Armand was a wound of friendship, Josephine was a wound of the heart. Josephine was beautiful in a way that stripped men of dignity while making them kneel willingly. She understood Napoleon. She knew his pride was his most fragile part. She stroked his ego the way one strokes a wild beast. Napoleon loved her with the love of a conqueror, intoxicating and possessive. But Josephine could not bear an heir, and for an emperor, that was a knife to the chest. The court whispered. The nobles looked at her with pity mixed with disdain. Those who clung to power aimed their daggers at her. One evening, Napoleon stood before the mirror. He looked at the crown on the table, looked at Josephine standing behind him. She knew what was coming. She did not beg. She only asked, "If I am no longer empress, will you still be you?" Napoleon smiled bitterly. "I must be emperor first." On the day the divorce papers were signed, Josephine wept. She cried like a woman who understood she was being replaced, not because love had ended, but because political value had. Napoleon also cried, but his tears fell onto the signature. And that signature was still signed. She left, leaving behind a room scented with flowers. That night, Napoleon sat alone, listening to the wind. He stared into the emptiness Josephine had left behind and realized a throne does not know how to embrace. But he did not allow himself weakness. He poured wine, drank as if to wash something away. It could not be washed, only grew heavier. Then came Waterloo, a day of rain and mud. In the life of a man accustomed to victory, defeat is not merely losing a battle. Defeat is realizing that one no longer controls fate. Cannons thundered, soldiers fell, mud clung to uniforms like it clung to honor. Napoleon stood on the battlefield, watching his army dissolve like foam. A young officer ran up, pale as paper. "Your Majesty, there is betrayal. Someone sold information to the enemy." Napoleon gazed toward the distance where his flag was trampled. He smiled, a strange smile, like one who has nothing left to lose. "Betrayal?" he said. "I used betrayal to rise. To die by betrayal is fitting." That smile was not the smile of enlightenment. It was the smile of a man beginning to see the karmic circle closing. After Waterloo, Napoleon was exiled, from emperor to prisoner. Of ambition, but perhaps there was another price, the price of resentment, suspicion, and irreversible decisions. St. Helena needed no prison. The sea was the wall. The wind was the whip. Solitude was the lock. Napoleon was given a stone house, food, servants, a doctor, but he lacked the thing he had lived for, power. And when power vanished, what remained in his mind was far more frightening. Every night he dreamed. He dreamed of Russian snow, of young soldiers shivering, eyes wide, of mothers screaming their sons' names, of Armand standing at the end of a corridor, holding the shoes he never had time to put on, of Josephine turning away, hair fragrant with flowers, never looking back. Napoleon woke gasping, shouting into the darkness, "I did it for France! I did it for glory!" The darkness did not answer. It only remained silent. And sometimes silence is the heaviest sentence of all. When the cheers outside disappear, one begins to hear the noise within. Napoleon heard it. One day, a guard announced that an Eastern monk wished to see him. The monk was old, dressed in brown robes, eyes strangely gentle on an island that imprisoned an emperor. Napoleon looked him over and asked disdainfully, "Have you come to pray for me?" The monk clasped his hands. "I came to remind you of something you have forgotten." "What have I forgotten?" The monk looked straight at him, voice light as mist. "You will die." The words struck like a hammer against the shell of pride. Napoleon fell silent. He looked at the sea. For a moment, he felt smaller than the wind. He asked, as if asking himself, "When I die, what will I take with me?" The monk replied, "Not the crown, not fame, not the empire." "Then what?" "Karma." Napoleon frowned. "My karma is victory." The monk shook his head. "Your karma is what you planted in the hearts of others." The words sounded simple, but it was as if someone opened Napoleon's invisible bag and shone a light inside. What was there? Blood, tears, names erased from life because of a single letter, love abandoned in a flower-scented room. Napoleon suddenly felt cold. Weeks later, a secret letter arrived. The old servant delivered it, trembling. No seal, only one line on the outside. "Before you die, know the truth." Napoleon opened it, read. The letter accusing Armand of betrayal was false, forged by an official seeking favor, eliminating an honest man. Napoleon read again and again. His hands shook until the paper rustled. He stared into emptiness as if seeing Armand standing there, silent, watching. Napoleon rose, legs weak, collapsed. He gasped as if being strangled. Then he wept. Not for the lost throne, but for realizing he had killed an innocent man, out of suspicion. The monk stood behind him, without reproach. Resentment blinds the eyes, power clouds the mind, and the self makes people cruel. Napoleon covered his face, tears flowing through his fingers. "I killed my friend." "You did not only kill Armand," the monk replied. "You killed the gentle part within yourself." Those words were the true blade. After that day, Napoleon changed. Not theatrically, but like a dying man who realizes there is no time left to perform. He began writing letters of apology, letters to war-torn lands, letters to families of those unjustly condemned. He ordered his remaining funds used to help families of fallen soldiers. People mocked. The emperor is acting to gain pity. Napoleon did not argue. He only told the monk, "I don't need them to believe. I only need not to die with this heavy bag." The monk nodded. Life is short, so short that if you spend it hating, when you turn back, it is already too late. Napoleon gazed at the sea. "If I have sown too much evil karma, is it still possible?" "It is," said the monk, "if you dare to let go, and if you dare to repay hatred with kindness." Napoleon smiled bitterly. "I once beheaded men, now I repay with kindness. Who would accept it?" "Kindness does not need acceptance," said the monk. "It is for you to save yourself." On the island was a young guard who hated Napoleon. Hated him like one hates a war ghost who killed one's brother. Each day he delivered food, tossing it onto the table like scraps to a dog. Once he even said bluntly, "Emperor, here you are only a prisoner." Napoleon heard it, said nothing. One stormy night, the guard fell gravely ill. The doctor was trapped by wind and rain. People feared contagion, feared trouble. They abandoned him. Napoleon heard. He ordered his own medicine brought over and told his servant, "If he dies, tell his mother. Napoleon owes her an apology." The servant stared. "But sir, he hates you." Napoleon replied hoarsely, "I spent my life repaying hatred. Now, I want to try repaying kindness." They brought the medicine. They cared for him. The guard survived. When he awoke, he saw Napoleon sitting beside him, the oil lamp flickering over the old face. He thought he was dreaming. "Why, you?" Napoleon interrupted gently. "Because I caused too many deaths. One life saved is a debt I should repay." The young man burst into tears. For the first time, he saw the emperor was not stone. The emperor trembled, tired, afraid, and repentant. From that day on, he no longer called Napoleon prisoner. He called him sir. Sometimes sir is not spoken to honor power, but to honor awakening. The final day arrived like frost, thin, cold, silent. Napoleon was very weak. His breath was short, his eyes dim, but strangely, his face was gentle. The monk sat beside him in silence. Napoleon whispered, "Master, I am afraid." "Of what?" "That the bag I carry is still heavy." The monk placed a hand on his chest. "You have set much of it down. You have stopped hating, stopped clinging. You have begun to sow goodness." Napoleon looked out the window. The sea was dark, but on the horizon, a thin line of light appeared. Dawn. He spoke slowly, each word falling. "I thought conquering the world was the greatest victory. It turns out conquering resentment is the true one." Then he smiled, a gentle smile. Not the smile of a conqueror, but of a man who had finally loosened the bonds within his heart. Napoleon closed his eyes. Outside, the wind still blew, waves still crashed, but in the small room, the invisible bag seemed lighter. Dear friends, life is short, so short that before we finish loving one another, we must part. Yet some people spend their entire lives hating. Napoleon once had the whole world, but he had no peace, because peace does not sit on a throne. Peace lies in what we are able to let go. And when we die, we do not take houses, not fame, not victories, only karma. Therefore, good karma is the only luggage we carry. Life is brief. Do not waste it on resentment. And if someone hurts us, we can choose revenge and hurt more, or choose once to repay hatred with kindness and let resentment dissolve. Not because the other deserves it, but because we deserve peace. If you believe every story carries a lesson of cause and effect, please press like to sow a good connection and subscribe to continue these stories with me.